That's great. Thank you, Andrew. So, welcome everybody to the fourth and final webinar of our series this year, Balancing Potential and Loss. It seems just moments ago that Femke was kicking us off with the first webinar of this series, and here we are now at the fourth webinar. So, as always, our speaker will talk for around 30 minutes or so, and we will then have a time for questions. If I can ask people to mute themselves whilst our speaker is talking, simply so we can avoid background noise. And when it comes to the end, if you do have any questions for Amanda, please do put them either in the chat or raise your hand either visually or on the system, and we will invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question. It's also really helpful if you are asking your question verbally, simply to say your name before you start speaking, so we know who it is that is asking the question, and perhaps saying where you're from as well. It can be helpful just to know a little bit about context. The webinar is being recorded, so if your presence here implies your consent to that recording, then the recording will be made available on our YouTube channel later, where we're collecting all our webinars, so it's becoming a really rich resource for people because we have such good speakers. And one of those speakers is Amanda Stevens, who I'm delighted to welcome as our presenter this afternoon, or for Amanda, very late this evening, in fact, early morning, 2:30 in the morning in New Zealand at 4 degrees. This is a woman that is committed to ADBN. If ever I've seen commitment, it is turning up at 2:30 on a very cold morning. So Amanda Stevens is an executive officer for Taringa, Turi, Kāpō, Rōpū. I don't know if my Te Ao Māori is very good, but I probably hashed the pronunciation of that. But hopefully people followed it to some level. In English, the Deafblind Association of New Zealand Charitable Trust, our first speaker in webinars from that side of the world. So we're really delighted that you've joined us, Amanda. Amanda is talking about the personal, the professional, the creative, and I'm very excited to hear from Amanda's story, personally, professionally, and I've already seen some of the photos that we're going to share later, so I'm really looking forward to the talk. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Kia ora tātou. That means hello to all of us, myself included. So for the time that we're together, we become a group with a meaningful context. So, and your pronunciation of the te reo was perfect, Peter. I loved the theme for these webinars of balancing potential and loss. And I love it always that potential comes first, of course. Immediately, Peter asked me for my theme. I knew that it would be professional is personal is creative, because I bring the whole of me to everything I do. So when I'm working in a professional space, to me it always also feels like a creative space. And part of that comes from just being such a tiny team. In the beginning, it was just me on 10 hours a week, is how we started the organisation. And then now it's me on 20 hours a week and a board secretary on 10. So we roll this whole thing over on less than a full-time equivalent. So that involves lots of creativity. I guess at the beginning, to tell you that I grew up on a tobacco farm in the South Island of New Zealand. New Zealand stopped producing its own tobacco in 1978, so quite some time ago now. When I was 19, I was doing a nursing degree and not very happy. So I left and I ran off to California for a couple of months, but I couldn't get a green card, even though I wanted to travel. So when I was 23, I was not in my niche then either. I was working in a investment division of an insurance company, just on the front desk. And I just found it very patronizing, actually, which just didn't suit me at all. So one day I typed up my resignation and handed it in, and they snatched it out of my hand. It was very mutual parting. And I rang my girlfriend, and a couple of months later, we were on our way to England. The first year, all the usual things, barmaiding and all of that kind of stuff. And then I ended up on Lincolnshire, northeast coast of England. My boyfriend promptly went back to London, and I was stuck there. And about a month later, I lost my sight. So I'd been fully sighted before that. Growing up on a farm, of course, it was forklifts and motorbikes and cars and trucks and all of that. So it was astonishingly hard not to be able to mobilize independently anymore. At age 24, when all I wanted to do was be out clubbing with my girlfriends and driving out to a pub in the country and all of those things. It was a very hard time. I was living in a flat with no telephone, and the television channel stuck on El Dorado for some reason. It was just appalling. So with no telephone and not really knowing anybody, and also being type 1 diabetic and not having a job, money was very, very thin. And we had there was a gas cooker in the flat, and I was too frightened to do it. I've been pretty frightened of it sighted, and that got worse when I lost my sight. So I was eating, cold food out of tins. I'm very scared. And then one night, to everybody's horror, a young girl was raped in the alleyway near my flat, and I was just terrified for weeks. I didn't want to go to sleep, and somehow I didn't want to wake up either, because I was frightened of both things. So that took a little bit of getting over, and eventually I took a couple of courses. I decided that I needed to find something in my life with some balance, like Femke, but not shiatsu for me. It was yoga. I tried a couple of things, looked down the list, and motorcycle engineering wasn't for me, and I went to a French class, but it was all things written on the board that I couldn't access. And I just thought it would be spoken French. I couldn't keep up. So eventually I went A, B, C, D and got down to Y for yoga. And I went to yoga, and I thought, if I do it wrong, the worst thing that's going to happen is that I'm going to feel foolish, and I can't fall off a mat on the floor. And I took to it like the proverbial duck to water. I loved it. And I found over a couple of years that center in myself, something for me that I could come to right in the middle, from the top of my head down to my feet, and start to feel balanced. I got some long cane training, and then about a year later, I got a beautiful guide dog who I adored, Penny. 2 years after I started the yoga, I was also doing a teaching diploma at a local college, working with students with what we then called learning disabilities, we now say intellectual disabilities, who quite often also had physical disabilities. So they taught me so much. I had just such wonderful, their potential inspired my potential, and we just learned from each other. It was wonderful. So I wrote advocacy courses because students with intellectual disabilities were being integrated in mainstream, and thank goodness for that. And there were some pretty tough standoffs that I had that were, needing the creative relationship or creative problem solving to be able to support that advocacy work. I was also teaching them yoga, which I loved. And I worked with 4 men from Sense UK at that time. And that's the first time I understood the impact of rubella. And again, a lot more creativity there. How was I going to get through? So I taught them the haka. And if you don't know what the haka is, then shame on you, because you should. It's what our All Blacks do at the beginning of every match. So I also was learning massage in the evenings, and teaching disability awareness part-time as well. So I had a pretty full schedule, and I was learning all the time. It was just wonderful. I had some very good supports around me, including my guide dog. And about 2 years after I started the yoga, my yoga teacher decided that she wanted to train yoga teachers, which is a whole other level for her. And I said, well, if you're going to do that, I would like to be one of your first students and become a yoga teacher myself. Neither of us knew how we were going to make that happen, but we did. It took me 4 years. So you can do the course between 2 and 4 years, the British Wheel of Yoga diploma, teaching diploma. 3 years in to that, I lost my sight totally. So there was no magnifying glass anymore, no CCTV, nothing. I had to do everything by touch typing and listening. That was quite hard. I found the transfer from visual learning to audio learning really hard to develop those neural pathways at a speed that my brain would be happy with, because I think fast, and I couldn't get the information in listening to it quickly enough. Anyway, I went to a weekend with the British Wheel of Yoga, and there's lots of people there, and we were asked to bring a gift, which was a question. Well, I'd got myself all steamed up, because when it came to my turn, I said, why is it that the British Wheel of Yoga Education Committee have said that I can do the course, but I will not be allowed to qualify? At huge expense, I might add. And the whole room went, ugh. And of course, I didn't know who was in the room. And a beautiful voice said, I am the chair of the Education Committee. And he said, people produce yoga videos and they cannot see their students. I cannot see why you will not be allowed to qualify, and I will make sure that you do. It was amazing. It was just, I've got tingles going up my spine now, just thinking about that moment. It was a little pivotal moment in my life of advocacy and support. It was wonderful. So I went on to do that and taught for 10 years. Mainstream in the local gym attached to the college. My students with learning disabilities, I taught yoga to. And it was all about balance and potential and loss for them as well. So we discovered along the way things like their ability to sit in front of a typewriter, a keyboard, became, you can tell I'm old, can you? Typewriter, became easier for them because their posture was better. Their walking on their walking frames was easier because they were more centered rather than staggering. So that was a beautiful thing. I loved that part of my life. Teaching all of those things. When was it? Just about 20 years later, I'd been working at the Royal National College for the Blind in Hereford, and my contract came to an end, and I didn't know what to do. I was living in Wales and loving it, but quite isolated, and I thought, I'm not going to get a job out here in the sticks. Maybe I'll go back to New Zealand and see, be with my parents as they get older and reconnect with whānau, family. And so I did that. About a year after I got home, I'd lost my stepfather during that time, my beloved stepfather. He was Dutch. I was hosting a girlfriend with a glass of wine at my flat, and I stood up to let her out, and I said, I feel quite dizzy. I think I'll go and lay down. And a couple of hours later, my parents came for me, and they had to drag me to the car. I was so dizzy and sick, and it transpires. They think I caught a virus which knocked out the 8th cranial nerve to the brain, which is a double strand, as many of you might know, with hearing and balance. So I couldn't sit up. I was in hospital for several days. When I did manage to stand up, I couldn't walk. It took me about a year to learn to walk again properly. Went home to my parents, and then they said, will you stay as long as you want? I said, I can't really live with my parents the rest of my life. I think I'll go back to my flat, thanks. I didn't know how I was going to do it because I couldn't stand up to cook or anything like that. So I made little ways of doing things that made it manageable. But mostly I had to crawl for about a month. When I was finally able to stand, I'd applied for a job, and I went to the interview and I thought, I really don't want this. What am I going to do? But I need some money. And they rang me the afternoon of the interview and said, you've got the job. Okay. Now what do I do? So I went to teach in a learning support unit for students with learning disabilities. Again, tutoring, that was great. And then a few weeks later, we got somebody up from Christchurch. It's we don't have many people in our area to support with either blindness or deaf blindness. So that's 500 kilometres away. Lloyd came, and that was the first time I heard the word deafblind. And I said, I can't be deafblind because I've still got some hearing. But we went through the complexities, and then I said, actually, I am struggling with that and that and that. And I came to know myself better. I'd been through such a huge, it feels like I cried for 2 years after I lost my sight. I was just devastated. But somehow losing the hearing, I didn't want to go down that spiral of grief again because it's a long, dark swirl down, and I just didn't want to go there. So I came back to my yoga. How to stand, how to balance myself, how to think about the next potential, what would I do, just growing things, anything I could think of to be creative and make my life work. So that was 15 years ago now, 2010. Of course, we've been through the hideous COVID since then. one of the things that came out of that is that Dr. Rebecca Graham got in touch with me. She's the Chief Executive of Parents Vision Impaired here in New Zealand. And somebody else with a doctorate from Auckland University of Technology, and the Chief Executive of Kāpō Māori, which is blind Māori. And we were all learning Zoom and all of that kind of, like I said to Peter earlier, if you don't know what the button does, don't push it. But we learned, and we created a chapter in a book that was published from Bristol. And it was about stories about COVID. And our chapter was the only one in the whole book that covered the impact of COVID on people with disabilities. Ours in particular was around access, the lack of being able to be with people and being in bubbles, and how hard that is as a deafblind person because we're all so tactile, and how, sorry, my clock, coming to the end, aren't I, Peter? So we wrote a book on, a chapter on IT and the difficulties of accessing IT if you are blind, deafblind, or low vision during COVID. And that was published, and we were absolutely thrilled about that. So that was turning some of COVID into a potential. I work from home anyway. You know, we don't have an office or anything like that, so I just work from my dining table. So there wasn't much change there. So that was something actually I was pretty proud of, I guess. Back in 2021, thank goodness, just between lockdowns, I'd organised a conference for deafblind, a national conference up in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and it was thrilling. I'd never done events management in my life, but I absolutely loved it. And I loved meeting people, and people just said, wow, isn't it nice to be together? And we booked long lunch hours so people could talk and get to know each other. Did the second one in Otautahi, that's Christchurch, in 2023. That was even more stunning. And I brought lots of creativity into that. We booked a beautiful place with a rose garden. It's got an award-winning garden in it. It was cheap because it's student accommodation. So it was all done on a shoestring. But there was a big common room. So I took down my peg loom and all of my creative stuff, and I organised a banjo session, and somebody bought their electric accordion, and every evening we just laughed and sang and played instruments and did craft. And it was fabulous because we had the whole place to ourselves. We could just leave it all out on the sofas and things, as long as you didn't leave the balls of wool near the guide dogs, because they love chomping those, as you know. And we just had a great time, and we've just now finished the third one, convened in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington. Andrew knows Wellington. And it was amazing. So we get ministers along, we get everybody we think that's going to make a change for deafblind in Aotearoa, the people that can make the change. And we've made some really strong connections with government. A couple of years ago, the Ministry for Disabled People was formed. It's called Whaikaha, which has a much nicer meaning than disabled people. It means people coming from a strength base. And I love that. So we're the only disability community in New Zealand that has an annual work plan with Whaikaha. and we are very pleased with that relationship. And that brings in this conference. For the very first time, we encouraged deaf and non-verbal people to come, and they did. Normally, it's very hard, of course, but we got the interpreters in. We just worked hard at the relationships, and that was brilliant. And they came, and on the Saturday evening, on the closing, the interpreters came to me and said that was gold standard for interpreting. One of them said, "This is the most accessible conference I've ever been to in my working career." Excuse me. So I felt a little bit chuffed, really, a little bit thrilled about that. The clean-up afterwards, the mop-up after a conference is huge, trying to make the numbers fit in the spreadsheet, but that's okay. We've got through that now. So I took things for people to do. Peter, can I ask you now to put some of the photographs? I don't know how to do it.
You can
I think
indeed.
there's one there. Oh, thank you. If I could hear somebody while that's happening, it's great.
Yep. I'm going to share the first one, Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can somebody tell me if they can see the photos now? Somebody can just, yeah, okay. So this first one, Amanda, you are, I think you've got a glue pen, perhaps. You're standing in front, I think, is it a glue pen? Is it a staple gun?
Yeah, it's a glue gun, and I am trying not to burn my fingers while I make the braille leaves that you will see shortly.
Okay. So this is a photo of making what we're going to see in a moment.
That's
okay.
So if I just showed you things, you'd think somebody else made them. So I had to prove that I did it.
Is that why you have the photo of you making it? So I'm going to show the braille leaves next then, if that's okay.
Lovely.
Yeah. So this is what Amanda was making. Okay, that photo is now up, the braille leaves. Do you want to tell us about those, Amanda?
You. That was a joy. I thought, how can I make everybody's names from the second conference part of who we are going forward so that other people can look back and be. I wanted a tactile part of our history. So I sourced some metal. They're actually tinfoil trays that go on the bottom of the oven, the silver ones. And I cut the edges off and rolled them out with a rolling pin. And then don't ever tell Blind Low Vision New Zealand, I stuck them in their Perkins brailler. And I brailled every single person's name, the minister, everybody. And then when they were done, I sent them out to everybody who had been at the 2023 conference, the photograph. So had all sorts of things. I jammed the Perkins umpteen dozen times. It really was quite shocking. As I say, don't ever tell anybody I did that.
We won't tell anyone, Amanda.
That's right. So, and then I had to find different colours because I wanted it to pop. I didn't want it to just be everything silver. So that took quite a long time. It took me a few months to do the project. What I didn't get done in time is that I intend to make a pottery vase for them to go in, like a shirt, so it will have a collar and just over the sides for the arms, so that all of those people become, I guess the concept is heads together, people together in a bunch within that vase, so that we were all collected together, not just, that was really cool. Okay, the next photograph, Peter.
The next one is you working with wool.
Yes. So if you can see it, I do it on a peg loom. So I weave the product to start with. It could be a wall hanging or something to throw over a chair or something like that. And then I get carded but unspun wool, in beautiful colours, and I needle felt them onto the first part. So then that one is my completing a flower onto a grey background. So the warp is orange, the weft is grey, and the flower is multicoloured. It's quite startling against the grey, I hope. Needle felting. I've got a little tool in my hand with 4 sharp needles with barbs on them. So understandably, I try to keep my other hand away while still holding the flower in place. So it's tricky, but it's I think it's quite effective. So I think the last photograph before I finish is the completed product.
Beautiful.
And what I do with these creations is our board are unremunerated, Kevin and Fresner and the gang. So every conference I have made something and gifted it to them with a little speech in front of everybody about what it is, what they've done for us as their gift to the deafblind community. And some of them are deafblind themselves, of course. So I gift those things away. I make all sorts of things, wall hangings and stuff. So, okay, I've probably gone over my time. I can't remember if I missed anything because I've done it all just ad hoc. Does anyone want to ask me anything, maybe?
Amanda, thank you so much. I know I've got a few questions, as I always do, but I'm going to hand it over first. But I'd just like to say huge thanks, such a fascinating story. And I was just reflecting on the title of your talk, Amanda, and certainly hearing you speak has inspired me. What has inspired me is your creativity, your professional life, and your personal life. So I think how you've brought those together, but in a way that has inspired me, certainly listening to you on all those levels, the traveling you've done, the places you have been. I'm now regretting telling you only have 30 minutes. It could have been 30 hours because I want to ask you all sorts of things, but I'm going to hand over now. I'm sure people have got other questions or comments they'd like to make. So, and I can see Femke is waving her hand. Femke, you have a question for Amanda. We can't hear you, Femke. We still can't hear you. I think Femke is just trying to unmute on the new Zoom.
There I am.
So there sorry. We go.
Yeah, so sorry. Gosh. Hi, Amanda. Yes, questions, but I want to basically tell how wonderful it is to hear your voice again, because you were saying then I heard a beautiful voice who was advocating for me. But that's what I feel now listening to your voice and remembering your voice from the very first time, and you have this beauty in it, and your story is expressing the same your voice is expressing. It's really, open to the world, and that's what moves me so much when I listen to you. Like when you so honestly share that, you for a long time you were in bed after you lost your sight and you didn't want to get up, but then you did, and that's something that comes back again and again in your story, and again you are opening up to the beauty, and that to me is really, really moving, and that to me is also inspiring, and it's literally moving. It keeps me forward, listening to you sharing that. And I want to ask you a little bit more about this yoga and bodily sensation, What did it bring you, and what is it still bringing you? Is it somehow connected to what you're still doing? Is it somehow connected to the beautiful art you create? And how is this connected to how you function now during the day? Big kiss, because I will unlock again, and I'm not sure I can unlock it again. So big kiss, but I keep listening.
Okay. Two things there. One is that I studied Hatha Yoga, and part of that is Patanjali's tree, 8 limbs. And one of those limbs is pranayama, breathing. And I think the breathing got me through a lot. So when I was confused, frightened, and lost in the street, I would stand still and hear, his name always escapes me, a famous writer anyway, he would say, stand still, the trees stand still, they are not lost. Stand still, you are not lost. And I would stand still and breathe, and eventually, as long as I wasn't in the middle of the road or a lightning storm, I figured if I just stand still, I'll be okay. So I think the breathing helped enormously. And then when I had my quadruple heart bypass 2-3 years ago now, and could barely breathe, I just kept focusing on the breath. And that was hugely helpful, and learning again after that operation, which is basically they crank you open like a spatchcock. It's not nice. So I had to again learn to walk and just center myself. Just getting from the bedroom to the bathroom was hard. But I think the breathing was the biggest thing. And I just want to make a quick comment on your asking me or commenting on the potential and the getting up and doing it. This is in my book, and yes, I am writing the book. It got to one summer's afternoon in a little cottage in Lincolnshire, and I was lying down on the sofa, and I thought, how long can I lay here until I simply, poof, I'm not here anymore. It wasn't active. I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to be anywhere. That's a difficult thing to explain, but it wasn't an active wanting to die. It was just not wanting to exist anymore. And I love this next bit. The only thing that saved me is that I am socially programmed not to pee on my own sofa. I had to get up and go to the bathroom, and the very act of moving in the world and having my body move through the world and do a physical task. And then I rang a girlfriend, and she said, you go into the kitchen now and you make yourself scrambled eggs, and then you eat it, and then you call me back when you've done that. And I did. So I guess that's all about moving my body through space and being in touch with the world and still centered in myself. I hope that answers.
It's much more than an answer. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. And I'm looking forward to the book.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing it.
Yes. Please, we will share news when your book comes out, Amanda, with members. I'm sure people will be interested in reading more about it. I'm still smiling of your story about not peeing on the sofa.
Now there's expectation on me. I must finish it.
Who knew the power of not peeing on this could be the title of the book, Not Peeing on My Sofa.
The title of the book is The Colour of Champagne.
Oh, well, that's much more a nicer image for us, I think.
That's right.
Does anybody, we have a comment, Amanda, from Georgia in the chat. Amanda, congratulations for your beautiful life. That is Georgia, who's joining us from Greece. Anybody have any comments or questions? Roger, you have your hand up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Roger, ask your question.
Okay. just two things. I mean, I loved it. I just absolutely enjoyed hearing your voice. I love the blend of personal and professional. I think it
Yes.
brings deafblindness and experience to life. And
Mm.
I love the fact that when you were flat out, we're back to the sofa now, when you were flat on your back, that you
Mm.
breathe.
Mm.
I
Mm.
too have had a kind of serious illness, and I can
Mm.
remember focusing on the breathing rather than
Yes.
the
Yes.
pain. I think that, so
Yes.
those are the two things I wanted to say, but I loved hearing you talk. Thank you.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure and a gift to me to be here.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Roger. Any other questions or
Yeah.
comments before Ruma, you have a
Yeah.
question. Hi,
Yeah.
Ruma.
No, I don't have any question, but just to share my appreciation, Amanda. And I'm really thrilled to hear from you and your life experience and the challenges you have faced and how you try to combat those. Definitely, I will share with my students who are deafblind. I work with them in Kolkata, India. So again, congratulations to you, and you are a source of inspiration to me, and I would share my feelings with my students. Thank you so much to be here.
Thank you, Ruma. Any other questions or comments before I ask my questions? No. Okay.
Oh, please, somebody
I always have
do,
questions.
because I'm terrified of Peter's questions.
Is this some kind of reputation I have, Amanda? I wonder. But I hope they're not too hard. The first one is, I think, because I'm just so inspired by people like yourself that are so creative. And I said earlier, just before we started, it's not simply the beautiful work that you produce, but the ideas behind it. So it's beautiful to see those braille leaves, but the idea itself it inspires me. And I wonder, where does your creativity come from? Is this something when you were growing up, or do you think it's always been part of you?
My grandmother and mother were incredible seamstresses and cooks and all of that kind of thing. My mother had some unrecognized mental health difficulties, and she told everybody, this is when I was sighted, that I couldn't do things. I couldn't use the sewing machine in case I put my needle through my finger. You know, everything was, I couldn't cook because I might burn myself, all of that kind of stuff. It's a very, very negative upbringing. And that little part inside me that always says, you just watch me.
That was the inspiration.
Yeah, and I guess it was, I think it's the inspiration for me is when people say you can't, I say that's short for can too, not
Like
cannot. So that's what I used to tell my students when they go, I can't do it, miss. It's like, well, you're just saying I can too. Let's do it, and I'll show you. I'll walk alongside you while you do it.
That's really brilliant.
So I think that's the inspiration. But I also, when I'm making gifts for the board, I think about the person. It's actually what I do every morning when I wake up. I make my coffee, feed my dog, and I go back to bed and I think about the people I'm likely to meet in my day and how am I going to get the best out of those relationships. So I begin to think about the person. So when I think about the board, I take into consideration things like how connected are they to tactile. With Kevin, I'd done something really beautiful for him, a previous conference. So last conference, I made my own limoncello from my own lemon trees in the garden. And so I put down a batch of limoncello about 4 months out from conference, and I took him a little bottle of it with a ribbon on it and handed it over at conference. And I said into the microphone, looks a lot like a urine sample. which of course it does. So really, people and growing things. I have a beautiful garden that I just adore being in. And so I guess people often say that with art, don't they, that it's nature that inspires. But it's also people. When I look into their souls as much as I can and work with them and get to know who they are, then that inspires me as well.
Lovely.
But if you want me to do something, just tell me I can't. And I'll do it.
Well,
or I'll give it my best shot.
On that note, Amanda, you can't do any of your beautiful artwork for ADBN or our future conferences.
Oh, really?
I've been scribbling away a whole list of things I want you to do, Amanda, quite frankly.
Oh,
so
fantastic. I'd be delighted.
I will email you to tell you how you can't do any of them.
Great.
And hope for a positive outcome. We have a comment. We have a comment in the chat, Amanda, from Joe in the UK. Joe, I would just like to thank Amanda for sharing such an interesting life, and I echo the same thanks as the last person. It's so inspirational. No, thank you, Joe, for that comment. Just one other question from me, if I may, Amanda. I was just interested that two things seem to come up a lot in your professional life: advocacy and education. So, you know, the role that you have had advocating for other people and educating all groups of people. And I wondered if, do those skills of advocacy and education enable you to advocate for yourself? Or do you think it's the advocacy that you've had to do for yourself that informs how you advocate others? Or is it less linear than that?
When I'm advocating, and I do that a lot with government, and a couple of weeks ago I was with the shadow spokesperson for disability for Labour, and she was, I try not to lead with my own story. I try not to dominate the attention with individual stories, because that doesn't help deafblind right throughout New Zealand. And we all, as we know, the intersectionality, we all have different experiences, different life views, different everything, gender. So what I try to do is advocate in a professional way for big change, like getting tactile communication interpreters trained, because we've only got a few around the country, maybe 4. And that means when people go into hospital, there's no one there to interpret for them, which is just, to me, shocking. I go with other deafblind people into those kinds of arenas so that people can see the differences. I drop a personal story in if something comes up that's particularly relevant. But I'm advocating all the time, every day. Every day I go out. You know, it was before I went deaf, actually, in my right side. But I was in a meeting. We were trying to get telephone dictation voting through for blind people in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And we went into the minister who was in charge of the whole thing at the time, Judith Collins, has a particularly scary reputation. And I explained that advocacy, that the telephone dictation voting would help, in particular, blind women who I felt were being coerced against their will to vote in a particular direction, and that I was deeply concerned about that coercion being taken by their partner or somebody else into a polling booth, and we must have a free and confidential vote. That was part of it, and there was a lot of other work around that. And at the end of the meeting, she looked at the Chief Electoral Commissioner and said, "Get it done." And so about 6 weeks out from the election, it was a lot of other work by a lot of other people as well. What I didn't choose to share with her is that In the previous election, I had voted against my will under coercion. And I was passionate that not exclusively women, men, of course, as well, but that we could have a confidential vote. Now I'm working, a lot of us are, with the electoral services again to try and get our local body elections, which are coming up in October. We're pretty much there, but they want us to disclose our electoral roll status and then give them our vote in the same phone call. And I said, well, that's not free and confidential, is it? You know who I am and who I've voted for. Let's separate that out into 2 separate phone calls received by 2 separate people. And we need to do that in every electorate across the country. So just working on that. I'll let you know how it goes.
Please do. I'm impressed, Amanda. I was a little aware of the size of the New Zealand Association, that it wasn't a big association, but I now realise from your talk, it really is a small organisation. So the impact that you've had on the country as a whole is hugely impressive, for such, a small group of people. Are there any other final questions just before I bring because I'm conscious of time now, we're coming towards the end, but we do have a couple more minutes if there are any other last questions or comments for Amanda.
I have a question. Oh, Jonathan, go.
Oh, we have a question from Jonathan and then a question from Carolina. Hi, John.
Hi, thank you, Pete. And just like everyone, Amanda, I'd just like to thank you so much for your talk, and the power of you really comes through in that, and I find it really inspirational and resilient. I was really just wanting to go back to the art that you make, and I'm interested in the idea of sort of tactile art and haptic art and art that's experienced through touch. And I wonder, on your journey, have you come across other artists, possibly who are also deafblind and who are also making work in this way?
Oh, I wish you could meet Phil. He is profoundly deafblind paraplegic as a result of meningitis at age 39. And he says he was struck down. He's an incredible artist. He carves in stone, but he also made a phenomenally perfect, it's not very good language, is it? Replica of one of the swords used in the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
and
wow.
He went to Weta Workshop and they lent him one of the swords out of the workshop, and he recreated it, and his brother is a builder, and he made a beautiful box that it's kept in. So it's a life-size sword. I can't even remember. We've actually got him on camera. We haven't been able to extricate it all, but we've got him on camera at Conference 2025. We decided not to do a on-stage performance thing. I decided that we'd make art the thing and just get everybody to speak from the floor about their particular art. And so we've got him recorded talking to that, about making that sword. So when we pull all of that out, if that's of interest, I know Phil will give me permission to share that. His story is on the web, so I'm not sharing anything that isn't public already. So I'd be happy to facilitate getting that to you. And other people I know, just sitting with people with my peg loom at conference where they were just, knitters and sewers and creatives like me. I love being around people like that. Yes, I know quite a lot of deafblind people.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Great.
Thanks, John. Carolina, you had a question too.
Yeah, I have a question also and a comment. Amanda, oh my gosh, you have inspired me so much. I am a former instructor of the deafblind, and your words really resonated with experiences that many of my learners shared. And it was but basically that they had the I can't ingrained. And it was like, what do you mean you can't? Like, I can't do yoga. I can't feel yoga. Like, I always kept hearing this, I can't, I can't, I can't. And it made me wonder if it was because of that environment that they were surrounded and people telling them, I can't, right? So I was trying to reframe the communication and say, let's think about it, why you believe you can't. And let's think about it and about other ways that, do you do this? Like, for example, I'm going to tell you about yoga, right? If they didn't have any vision left or no hearing, because I met individuals who were total, and they would say, well, I can't see the signs of the instructors, or somebody doing tactile signing interrupts, the feeling. So we came across with a fan, for example, for them to be able to switch poses so they would know ahead of time, what was the next pose after they learned what was in the class. So there's always a can. And that's what I was trying to instill in them. The same happened with the pandemic. During the pandemic, I can't do video conferencing. And I was like, yes, you can. And we've proven that many people who are deafblind learned to do video conferencing, and so did sighted. Many people didn't know how to do video conferencing. We were all together and we all learned together. So I love the fact that you inspire that and you say, tell me I can't and I'll do it. Like, I'll prove you wrong. And I love that because, the deafblind community, I think, and everybody else, I think this is the attitude. We need to hear more of that. So I'm going to go with my question. You mentioned that you were inspired to write advocacy courses by your students. And what is the single most important lesson they taught you about effective advocacy?
Uh, hmm. The first thing that comes to mind is I had a student who was about 18. He'd been homeschooled by his mother all of his life, so he was totally unable to socialize in the environment, and he would just sit under the table the whole lesson. So I let that go on for about 3 lessons, and then one day somebody told me that he had actually learned to read and write. So it's fine. So I just shoved a pad of paper and a pen under the table. And he got out from under the table and started to write things. And it was amazing. And then what I did was, for the students who were illiterate, I got them going to the library, doing different tasks, whatever it was. I got him to write it down for them and read it to them. And I also had a card, angel cards, with different words, and there'd be an angel knitting, and it would be whatever the word was. So it was words like inspiration and all sorts of things. And so every morning a student would pick their card for the day, and if they couldn't read it, he would read it to them. And I thought, advocacy works if you do it together. I think that's my biggest thing. If we try and do it alone, or even take credit for it, and we don't work with the team or with each other, then it's never going to have the social change that we want. And I got the students working together. Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. That's very inspiring. There should always, be a book about that, I think, about all those moments, right? That inspires us to do more advocacy. I love it how you phrase it. Thank you.
What I also, in giving the cards out every morning, you could never choose a wrong card because they were all beautiful. So you could never be wrong. So you always started your day feeling that you got something right. Yeah. It's nice.
I'm gonna throw a heart on the screen. I love it. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, everyone, for really insightful questions and discussions. I know we could continue talking for longer, but we have come towards the end of our time now. I'm very conscious it's 3:30 in the morning now, Amanda, and your bed must be calling you. It's 4:30 in the UK, and my bed's calling me now. So the fact that you are still with us at 3:30 in the morning really is impressive. So
that was my question, Peter. Can I go back to bed now?
You certainly can. We are so grateful, not only that if you have presented for us with such an inspirational presentation, but also doing it at a time that has enabled us to keep our usual time for our webinars. So Amanda, huge thanks. And can I thank all our speakers of this year's ADBN webinar series. Thanks to Femke Krijger, to Hannah McPearcy, to Vikram Chowdhury, and to you, Amanda, 4 excellent speakers. This was our 4th series of webinars. So I do hope, members, that you have enjoyed this year's webinars. We will be back with another series of webinars next year, perhaps as a mini exclusive for those attending today. The theme of next year's webinars is Acquired Deafblindness, the stories we tell. But I won't tell you any more about that yet. You will have to await further news on the dates and the speakers for next year's webinars, but I do hope you will join us for them. Can I also thank Deafblind UK, who provide the Zoom link for us to use so that we can host these webinars. We may be exploring alternatives to Zoom in the future. Certain members are in places in the world that don't have access to Zoom. So we will be exploring whether we may use an alternate platform to increase accessibility to all our members for our webinars, because they are well received. So thank you to Deafblind UK, however, for enabling us to host the webinars. And thanks, of course, to you all members for joining, supporting, for your contributions to the network. It is much appreciated. Keep an eye out for Amanda's book that we hope will be out soon. We look forward to seeing that and reading that. But for now, I will be in touch with members during the rest of the year with any other announcements. Do enjoy the final newsletter that went out last week. But in the meantime, look after yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you all next year for our 5th series of webinars. Good morning, good afternoon, and Amanda, good night, sleep well, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everyone. Lovely to see you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye very much.
Kia ora,
Bye.
Amanda.
Bye, Amanda.
Hey, just stay in